They were very afraid of these very powerful people.
She would like write down her phone number for a child, a young girl, and then I'd see that child at the house.
Wherever Epstein was touching down, he needed to have girls on constant call.
The August 2019 demise of Jeffrey Epstein sparked widespread outrage among the media and the public, marking what appeared to be the conclusion of a disturbing narrative involving wealth, influence, and the sinister realm of CE. The event triggered a wave of emotions, including anger, sorrow, and the proliferation of various conspiracy theories. Despite Epstein's demise, the complex saga surrounding his malevolence and the pursuit of justice for his victims continues, indicating that the resolution and restitution for those affected are still ongoing. While Epstein was frequently referred to as a billionaire, there is limited evidence to support that claim, and it appears he was at most extremely wealthy. His notable assets included a townhouse on the Upper East Side of Manhattan valued at over $50 million, a Palm Beach mansion worth approximately $12 million, a ranch in New Mexico valued at just over $17 million, and an apartment in Paris estimated at $8.6 million. Little St. James, his Caribbean island, was recently assessed at nearly $64 million.
From the air, opulence is on display. 2 pools, perfectly manicured beaches lined with palm trees, surrounded by turquoise waters.
Reports suggest that Epstein earned over $200 million during his decade-plus role as a financial advisor for Les Wexner, the CEO of L Brands. However, it remains unclear whether the value of the Manhattan townhouse transferred to Epstein from Wexner in 2011 is included in that sum. Les Wexner recently disclosed in a letter that Epstein improperly took vast sums of money from him in the mid-2000s. Additionally, in late 2007 and early 2008, Epstein reportedly repaid some of Wexner's money with a $46 million donation to a charity associated with Wexner's wife. The possibility of Wexner bringing a legal action against Epstein's estate is uncertain. Epstein seems to have offered tax and estate planning advice to several affluent individuals, including Leon Black, the billionaire chairman of Apollo Global Management, a private equity firm. While the exact amount paid by Black for Epstein's advice remains unclear, in 2015, a charity controlled by Black reportedly made a $10 million donation to a charity overseen by Epstein, as reported by Bloomberg News.
Leon Black paid something like $158 million to Epstein over the course of 2012 to 2017, and that was basically for his personal tax affairs.
During Epstein's criminal proceedings, he submitted a financial statement stating that he had $559 million in assets. However, the filing did not list any debt and provided minimal details, mentioning nearly $200 million in hedge fund and private equity investments. Given the potential legal actions against him, it is conceivable that Epstein aimed to downplay his assets in the filing. As reported by the New York Times, Jeffrey Epstein's estate was initially valued at around $600 million at the time of his death. However, this figure has substantially decreased over time, primarily due to expenditures such as legal fees, settlements, and the maintenance costs of his extensive properties while they were on the market. By January 2022, the New York Times estimated the estate's value had dwindled to $185 million. Subsequently, in November 2022, NBC disclosed that the estate was set to pay over $105 million to the U.S. Virgin Islands. This payment resulted from a lawsuit filed by the U.S. Virgin Islands, alleging that Epstein had utilized his private island within their jurisdiction for ST activities.
On my own island, I can think the thoughts I want to think. I can do the work I want to do. I can see to explore as I see.
Despite media outlets obtaining a copy of Jeffrey Epstein's will, the deceased convicted P managed to obscure the trail of his wealth by transferring it into a trust known as the 1953 Trust, which remains confidential. Consequently, the full extent of the individuals who have benefited from the late P fortune may never be completely disclosed. Experts suggest that 2 distinct groups stand to gain from Epstein's estate. Firstly, the victims who persist in seeking compensation, and secondly, individuals in his inner circle who are designated as beneficiaries of his trust. Exploring the details of Epstein's beneficiaries proves challenging due to the confidentiality surrounding his trusts. Nevertheless, there are strong indications pointing to 2 individuals who are likely beneficiaries. One of them is Karina Shuliak, Epstein's 30-year-old girlfriend at the time of his death. Their relationship spanned several years, during which Epstein provided financial support, including assistance with Shuliak's dental school tuition. Although Shuliak has refrained from making public statements about her connection to Epstein, the New York Times has reported her as one of his significant subsequent beneficiaries. Shuliak remained steadfastly loyal to Epstein until the end, being the sole individual to engage in phone conversations with him during his time in jail. Their initial call took place on July 30th, 2019, and the second occurred on the eve of Epstein's tragic S. Interestingly, Epstein informed the guards that he was speaking with his mother, who had passed away years earlier, when in reality he was in contact with Shuliak. The second individual presumed to benefit from Epstein's estate is his brother Mark, as reported by the Daily Mail. While this assertion lacks official confirmation, the fact that Mark Epstein had engaged in at least one business venture with his late brother, coupled with his offering of his condo as collateral for Epstein's bail, suggests a positive relationship between the siblings. These indicators imply that there is likely no reason to exclude Mark from considerations related to Epstein's estate.
I don't know what to make out of these documents. I don't know how these lists were compiled, and I have nothing to do with that. That's not my business. What I'm concerned about is my brother's murder.
Furthermore, the possibility of additional undisclosed beneficiaries adds another layer of mystery to Epstein's estate. The St. Thomas Source, a local Caribbean newspaper situated near Epstein's private island, brought attention to this in 2019. The publication reported that Epstein's will hinted at the existence of more beneficiaries who might come forward to assert their claims following his demise. Nevertheless, those entitled to Epstein's estate will find themselves in legal battles against the survivors of Epstein's crimes, who continue their efforts to secure a share of his wealth after enduring his A. A program known as the Epstein Victims Compensation Program has already disbursed approximately $125 million to those who accused him. Despite this, many survivors argue that the compensation falls short. Additionally, experts in trusts and estates point out that the fund served as a strategic maneuver to shield Epstein's estate from heightened scrutiny and legal actions. For survivors who rejected the compensation terms outlined by the program, the only recourse has been to embark on the arduous and costly path of civil litigation.
It was Little St. Jeff's. That was his nickname for it.
However, the challenges posed by the lengthy and costly nature of civil litigation don't imply its absence. On December 13, 2022, Bloomberg reported the filing of a new case against Epstein's estate by two women who alleged assaults in 2003 and 2005. Even when the legal intricacies are resolved, a final obstacle emerges: gaining access to Epstein's wealth. As reported by The Guardian, a mere 48 hours before his S, Epstein crafted a will that intricately tied the majority of his assets into trust funds. The utilization of a trust fund not only shrouded the future of his estate in secrecy, but also significantly complicated the victim's ability to claim their rightful compensation. Moreover, it likely mandates the involvement of tax lawyers, whose fees further diminish the victim's potential remuneration. Furthermore, CBS News highlighted Epstein's pattern of concealing his wealth in numerous offshore accounts and shell corporations throughout his lifetime. This raises the likelihood that certain portions of his estate remain undisclosed and may never be accessible to his victims.
I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what was going to happen if I said no. I didn't know what was going to happen if I screamed. I did what they said.
The circumstances surrounding Epstein's ability to create a new will in his final days have sparked controversy, with critics particularly targeting Epstein's legal representatives and the New York correction system. The act of drafting a new will is often viewed as an indicator of an impending S attempt. However, Epstein's S has also provided an opportunity for legal arguments asserting that he was not in a sound state of mind when creating the document. Such claims could potentially invalidate the trust and simplify the process for victims to claim their share of his fortune. The most significant ongoing expenditure is attributed to legal costs amounting to $30 million thus far, incurred by law firms enlisted to manage Epstein's affairs. These legal professionals have been instrumental in overseeing settlements, liquidating assets, and navigating the intricate holdings of a man who once established his own offshore bank. This legal undertaking is far from concluded. The estate is still tasked with resolving a civil fraud lawsuit initiated by the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands. The lawsuit contends that Mr. Epstein exploited the territory to orchestrate a criminal enterprise, allegedly defrauding it of over $70 million in tax revenue. Additionally, Ghislaine Maxwell, a former associate of Mr. Epstein convicted of ST charges, has filed a lawsuit against the estate to recover her legal fees.
I believe that he was murdered. I was shocked. I wondered how it had happened. I honestly wish I'd never met him.
The estate has disbursed $9 million to the legal team responsible for establishing and overseeing the victims' restitution fund. Additionally, quarterly financial statements filed by the estate in Superior Court in the Virgin Islands reveal payments of $21 million to a minimum of 16 law firms for various services and expenses. Among these firms, Troutman Pepper, Hughes Hubbard, and Reed, White and Case, McLaughlin and Stern, and Keller Hall's Ferguson Croblin have each received fees surpassing the average award of nearly $900,000 provided to victims through the compensation fund. A lawyer representing 9 accusers who submitted claims has raised concerns about the magnitude of these legal bills. Quote, "It is appalling that lawyers divvying up the estate of Jeffrey Epstein are profiting more than his victims," said the Florida lawyer Spencer Cooven, who has been seeking compensation for some of Mr. Epstein's accusers for more than a decade. Daniel Weiner, an attorney with Hughes Hubbard, a firm that has invoiced the estate for over $6 million, argued against comparing legal fees to settlement amounts. Weiner stated that the estate's executors, Darren Indyke and Richard Kahn, did not impose any restrictions on the restitution fund's disbursements, which were overseen by an independent administrator. He emphasized that participants in the fund could sidestep litigation expenses that might have otherwise diminished their awards. Notably, fees for victims' lawyers are typically drawn from the awarded amounts, with a 1/3 share being customary. Mr. Weiner declined to comment on whether Mr. Indyke and Mr. Kahn, who served as long-standing advisors to Mr. Epstein, would ultimately receive any proceeds from the estate through the trust. Quote, "The trust Mr. Epstein created before his death has not and will not be funded, if ever, until every single claim against the estate has been resolved," Mr. Weiner said in a statement. "Public curiosity as to contingent beneficiaries who may never receive anything from that trust cannot justify violating their legitimate privacy interests." Despite the ongoing expansion of the estate's legal expenses, William LaPiana, a trust and estates expert and professor at New York Law School, remarked that the costs up to this point are relatively standard. Mr. LaPiana noted that it is not uncommon for legal fees in intricate estates with significant litigation involvement to approach around 5% of the estate's initial value. As of now, the legal fees unrelated to the compensation fund constitute approximately 3.5% of the estate's initial valuation. He added, quote, "I don't believe a court would yet decide that the admittedly large fees are excessive. The legal fees are just one element in a comprehensive list of expenses that have eroded the fortune Mr. Epstein amassed primarily through financial and tax advisory services for a select group of affluent individuals and who knows what else." Notable among his clients were billionaires Leon Black, a founder of the private equity firm Apollo Group Capital, and Leslie Wexner, the founder of a retail empire that once included Victoria's Secret.
The reason he paid Epstein, as you say, a convicted pedophile, $158 million was because he saved him about $1 to $2 billion in potential tax charges.
The estate has faced a tax bill of approximately $180 million, while the maintenance of properties including 2 tropical islands, the ranch, and an unsold Paris apartment has incurred additional costs reaching millions. Furthermore, the estate is shelling out approximately $15,000 monthly to store Mr. Epstein's art collection in a temperature-controlled warehouse in Long Island City, as per court filings. Routine expenditures also include around $390 per month to Verizon for phone services and about $154 per month to Dish for satellite TV services, as indicated in the filings.
On almost every trip that I did go on, there were young girls around.
The estate has seen cash inflows through the sale of assets, including $66 million from the sale of Mr. Epstein's former residences in Manhattan and Palm Beach, Florida, albeit at prices below their initial asking amounts. One of Mr. Epstein's 3 planes, a Gulfstream jet, was sold for $10 million in late 2020, a figure $7 million less than the estate's valuation. In August, the estate disposed of its half interest in a yacht club on St. Thomas for $4.6 million. A few months prior, Mr. Epstein's Sikorsky helicopter was sold, generating $1.5 million. Other asset sales have brought in more modest amounts, such as $985 for an IKEA green shag rug and outdoor furniture from Mr. Epstein's island home in September. The current estimated value of the estate stands at approximately $185 million, and the ongoing litigation with the Virgin Islands poses a significant threat to much of his wealth. Denise George, the Attorney General of the territory, initiated a civil fraud complaint against the estate 2 years ago. The complaint alleges that Mr. Epstein wrongfully obtained a tax benefit that facilitated his financing of ST activities. According to Ms. George, the improper benefit deprived the territory, where the poverty rate is approximately twice the national average of crucial revenue. Her legal action seeks to recover tens of millions in lost revenue along with punitive damages.
According to that lawsuit, was the principal business of those accounts that Epstein maintained.
Ms. George's office has enlisted the services of the law firm Motley Rice to lead a significant portion of its investigation. The compensation for Motley Rice will be contingent on any judgment or recovery achieved in the case as confirmed by the Attorney General's office. Settlement talks between the two parties commenced last year, although as of now they are reportedly not close to reaching an agreement, according to two individuals familiar with the matter who spoke on the condition of anonymity due to the confidentiality of the discussions. Sandra Gumansingh, a spokeswoman for Ms. George, refrained from commenting on whether settlement negotiations were ongoing, and Mr. Weiner also chose not to comment on the talks. However, the complexity of legal issues arising from Epstein's alleged of numerous women could result in a substantial legal bill that may exceed the estate's value. Due to potential liability exposure, Epstein's brother might choose not to administer the estate, according to Bruce Steiner, an estate lawyer in New York City. This could further complicate and extend the timeline for the estate resolution. If Mark Epstein chooses not to be the executor, one of Epstein's creditors, potentially one of the victims, could apply for the role. Alternatively, the court might appoint a public administrator. However, this process is governed by New York law, and the application of estate law in the U.S. Virgin Islands is less clear. A significant challenge in resolving Epstein's estate is the difficulty in locating all of his assets. Given his involvement in advising on tax shelters and the complex financial structures uncovered during his 2008 conviction in Florida for crimes, many of his assets may be distributed across multiple corporations and offshore accounts. Untangling this intricate web, especially without Epstein's cooperation, is anticipated to be a time-consuming process. One person on the internet wrote, quote, "It's insane that the US Virgin Islands got to sue before the people who were hurt in the Virgin Islands did. They should sue the Virgin Islands for failing them. Oh, and he didn't K himself." Another one added, quote, "People are fascinated by the place, sure, but to turn it into a resort is in poor taste and shows the unempathetic nature of the person who bought it. It says a lot about the new owner. I hope profits are shared with programs that support victims." On January 3rd, 2024, the narrative took another significant turn with the release of 40 court documents from a 2015 defamation lawsuit filed against Ghislaine Maxwell by an Epstein victim. These documents identified 150 associates of Epstein, implicating several public figures. Among them, the renowned magician David Copperfield stood out, as per the testimony of one Epstein victim who alleged that Copperfield was aware of Epstein's criminal activities. Details about David Copperfield's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein began to surface as early as 2020 when Bradley J. Edwards published Relentless Pursuit: My Fight for the Victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Edwards, a trial attorney, spent a decade building a case against Epstein with the aim of bringing him to justice. According to Edwards' book, Copperfield was described as a frequent visitor to Epstein's mansion. As the investigation unfolded, attempts were made to interview Copperfield for information on Epstein, but lawyers were unable to subpoena him, and he has yet to provide testimony regarding his association with the disgraced financier. It's important to note that there is no evidence suggesting that Copperfield himself engaged in any criminal activity related to the accusations against Epstein and Maxwell. Similar high-profile estate cases, such as that of real estate billionaire Leona Helmsley in 2017, have demonstrated that the resolution of complex estates can span many years. Even without the added complications of Epstein's legal issues, estate disputes can endure, as seen in the case of Leona Helmsley's will, which included a substantial bequest for her dog, Trouble.